Besties, buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is so explosive, so off the rails, that Hollywood is already scrambling to contain it. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' secret phone calls, yes, the ones they swore would never see daylight, have now been confirmed, recorded, documented, locked inside a legal case that is about to blow wide open. And when you hear what was said on those calls, it will change everything you thought you knew about this feud. Stay right here, because this story only gets darker from here. In the middle of a storm that no one in Hollywood saw coming, the energy behind the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni feud has shifted once again. And now every insider, every commentator, and every source close to the situation is whispering the same thing: that the truth has finally begun to leak, and it is far worse than anyone imagined. Because when Colleen Hoover finally opened her mouth and spoke about the chaos surrounding the "It Ends With Us" drama, everything changed, and the entire industry suddenly realized that the silence had not been innocence, but strategy. Because for months, the world watched Blake Lively attempt to navigate a mounting avalanche of backlash, missteps, legal threats, and contradictions. And now that Colleen Hoover has stepped into the arena, her words are ringing louder than any PR-crafted statement could ever hope to sound, creating a ripple effect of speculation, outrage, and disbelief as people dissect every layer of what has really been happening behind the scenes. And if you think this is just another celebrity disagreement, think again, because multiple insiders are suggesting that the original tension between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively was only the surface level crack in a much larger foundation, one that Hollywood has desperately tried to plaster over but can no longer contain, since the narratives have been shifting too fast, the reactions too intense, and the details far too messy to hide any longer. And when you look closely at the timeline, you see how everything began heating up from the moment Blake attempted to distance herself from Justin while simultaneously positioning herself as the creative visionary behind a project she allegedly undermined from the inside, which is where Colleen Hoover's newly revealed statements begin to matter. Because she was the one person everyone expected to stay quiet forever, the one person insiders believed would never voluntarily enter the public crossfire between these two actors. Yet here she is, tearing open the curtain that Blake Lively's PR camp spent months trying to stitch shut. And her perspective is sending shockwaves through every fan base, studio office, and legal team paying attention. Because if an author as influential and as protective of her work as Colleen Hoover is now speaking openly about the tension and the mishandling and the internal conflict around the adaptation, then it means the iceberg is wider, taller, and much deeper than anyone thought. And the fallout is nowhere near over, especially when you consider that Blake has been fighting a public relations battle on one front, a legal battle with Justin Baldoni on another, and an internal reputation battle in Hollywood that seems to be slipping through her fingers more and more each day. While Justin Baldoni, according to several production insiders, has been playing the long game, staying strategic, staying composed, gathering receipts, and preparing for the moment when the truth would speak louder than the headlines. And guess what? That moment is right now, because Colleen Hoover, of all people, has now confirmed that there were problems long before the cameras rolled, long before the trailer dropped, long before the first behind-the-scenes clip started circulating, and that should terrify Blake Lively's team more than anything else, because it means the chaos was not accidental, not random, not sudden, but systemic and ongoing. And if that is true, then we have reached the point in this saga where damage control is no longer possible, and accountability is the only card left to play. And as the public starts to piece together what really went wrong, including the alleged push and pull behind creative decisions, the power struggle that insiders claim was happening on set, and the whispered accusations that Blake and her team were trying to steer the narrative in her favor long before the movie even entered the editing room, the outrage is building. And the commentary is flooding every corner of social media as fans argue about who is lying, who is manipulating, and who is telling the truth. While Colleen Hoover's words hang over the entire discussion like a heavy cloud of confirmation, because she is not just a random observer.
She is the creator, the mind behind the story, the person whose name is tied to every frame of the film. And when she speaks publicly about turmoil, tension, and behind-the-scenes conflict, it forces everyone to reconsider their assumptions. And that is exactly what is happening right now, as new information, new leaks, and new reactions collide across the internet, painting a picture of a production that was not simply chaotic, but mismanaged at the highest levels, with decisions that may have fractured professional relationships, triggered legal complications, and ignited a cultural firestorm that refuses to calm down. And with Colleen Hoover breaking her silence, fans are re-examining every clip, every interview, every uneasy smile from Blake, every stiff response from Justin, every awkward press interaction. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that this feud has roots stretching far beyond professional disagreements and into personal frustration, creative clashes, ego wars, and possibly broken trust. And as all of this unravels, the conversation online is turning into a full-blown investigation, with people questioning whether Blake Lively misrepresented her involvement, whether Justin Baldoni was unfairly vilified, whether Colleen Hoover was pressured into silence, and whether the studio knowingly tried to suppress the truth to protect reputations and profits. But the fascinating part is that the more people dig, the more inconsistencies they find, because the timelines do not match, the statements do not align, the energy behind the scenes does not match the polished public facade. And now that Colleen Hoover has entered the conversation, it feels like the dam is finally cracking, because her followers, her readers, and her extremely loyal community are treating her words as a final signal that things were never as harmonious or collaborative as they appeared. And this revelation is causing Hollywood elites to panic, because if more insiders step forward, if more collaborators speak up, if more details leak, this could evolve from a simple feud into a massive scandal, affecting careers, branding partnerships, future projects, and maybe even legal consequences. And that is exactly why the reaction online is so explosive right now, because people can feel the shift. They can sense that something much larger is brewing, and they know that when an author stays silent for months, then suddenly speaks their truth, it means they have reached a point where their silence is no longer morally or professionally possible. And that right there is why this entire situation is beginning to spiral into something much bigger than anyone predicted earlier this year, as fans demand justice, transparency, honesty, and accountability from everyone involved, especially Blake Lively, whose image has been rapidly slipping out of her control as more unflattering details surface and more inconsistencies become impossible to ignore, leaving her team scrambling to rewrite a narrative that no longer belongs to them. And the more Colleen Hoover reveals, the more impossible it becomes for Blake to maintain the story she once tried to push, because the author is not beholden to her, the studio is not above scrutiny, and the public is no longer convinced by the polished PR exterior that has been collapsing piece by piece. And as this drama intensifies, it is becoming clear that we are only at the beginning of a much larger unraveling that will expose everything the public has been questioning and everything Hollywood tried so hard to hide.
And as the dust settled from the initial shockwave, the industry realized that this was not just another celebrity feud spiraling out of control, but a full-blown unraveling of a carefully managed brand empire. And while the public continued to pick apart every rumor and leaked detail, insiders started asking a different question. How much of this chaos was actually orchestrated? And how much was the result of secrets finally rotting their way out from beneath the surface? Because as more information emerged, it became obvious that the cracks in the Lively Reynolds facade had been forming for years, hidden beneath layers of red carpet smiles, social media banter, and that polished, relatable married couple aesthetic that fans loved so much. But behind closed doors, sources now claim there were arguments about control, image management, and who was sacrificing what for the sake of maintaining their perfect Hollywood narrative. And those secret phone calls, allegedly recorded during some of their most tense moments, were purportedly filled with accusations, frustrations, and even strategic conversations about which narrative to push in the media, which interviews to avoid, and which stories to shut down before they caught fire. And while all of this might sound dramatic,
even for Hollywood, the fact that these calls were brought up in legal filings suggests there is something substantive here, something that goes beyond gossip and speculation, and that is what has the industry on edge. Because if those transcripts ever become public, they could expose not just the fragile foundation of their own marriage, but the larger machine that controls how celebrities craft their images and manipulate their public personas. And what makes it even wilder is that these recordings allegedly intersect with the Baldoni case, specifically with claims that certain narratives were pushed behind the scenes to protect reputations at the expense of others, reputations that were deemed more disposable, less influential, and more convenient to blame. And if those allegations are true, then this whole situation is not just about personal drama, but about power dynamics, media influence, and the unspoken hierarchy that governs who gets protected and who gets sacrificed in Hollywood. And it is that exact theme that has sent shockwaves through agencies, PR firms, and production companies. Because if Lively and Reynolds are implicated in any form of narrative manipulation, then other stars might start coming forward with their own experiences, exposing a tangled web of deals, favors, threats, and calculated leaks that have been operating in plain sight for years. And let's be honest, Hollywood is built on image control, but rarely does the public get to see the machinery behind it laid out in black and white. And these phone calls, if they do in fact exist, could be that rare moment where the curtain is ripped back, revealing the strategies, the panic, the personal insecurities, and the lengths celebrities will go to in order to maintain the illusion of perfection. And while Lively and Reynolds have remained silent publicly, those close to them say the pressure behind the scenes is reaching a breaking point, with both reportedly frustrated, angry, and terrified over what might come next. Because once something enters a legal process, it becomes much harder to bury, especially when multiple parties have access and multiple agendas are at play. And insiders say just the possibility of these calls being authenticated has already strained their inner circle, leading to arguments, lost friendships, and betrayals from people who refuse to be pulled down with them.
And one source even claimed that a well-known industry figure who used to be close to the couple has now completely distanced themselves after allegedly hearing one of the leaked recordings, saying it was not just damaging, it was career-ending if it ever hit the public eye. And if that is true, then this story is nowhere near its peak, because Hollywood thrives on scandal, but it also devours its own, especially when a narrative becomes too big, too messy, and too uncontrollable. And right now the situation is becoming exactly that, a runaway train fueled by leaks, speculation, legal filings, and a growing number of insiders who no longer feel the need to stay quiet. And perhaps the most ironic twist is that throughout all of this, some fans have started revisiting old interviews, red carpet appearances, and social media posts, picking apart every awkward glance, forced smile, and overly rehearsed exchange, searching for clues that the perfect couple act was cracking long before the truth started leaking. And when you look at those moments through the lens of what is happening now, it becomes harder not to notice the tension, the power imbalance, and the subtle signs that maybe the image was more performance than reality. And on top of that, more people are questioning how much influence certain powerful publicists and studios really had over shaping the narrative of the Baldoni feud, and whether Lively and Reynolds were encouraged to participate in that shaping, or whether they acted of their own accord, trying to steer the storm before it reached them. But the problem with secrets is that once the first one escapes, the rest tend to follow. And that is exactly what is happening now. A landslide of revelations that started with whispers and has now turned into a roaring river of accusations, denials, and scrambled damage control efforts. And some sources insist we have not even reached the most explosive part yet, claiming that there are more recordings, more texts, and more behind-the-scenes conversations that could completely shift the public understanding of what really went down. And if that is true,
then the industry is bracing for a scandal that could redefine how celebrities handle their public image going forward. Because if people start losing trust in the authenticity of what they see or hear from their favorite stars, then the very foundation of the Hollywood machine begins to crack and crumble. And that is why so many insiders are terrified right now, because this situation is not just messy, it is foundationally threatening. And people who have built entire careers on crafting illusions cannot afford for those illusions to collapse. And so while Lively and Reynolds continue to stay silent publicly, their lawyers, their publicists, and their crisis management teams are reportedly working overtime, trying to predict every possible angle, every potential leak, and every worst-case scenario. Because if even a fraction of what has been whispered is true, then this could escalate into one of the biggest image scandals of the decade. And the pressure is only intensifying as journalists, commentators, and content creators dig deeper, uncovering inconsistencies, patterns, and motivations that hint at a story far more complex and far more deliberate than anyone originally suspected. And one thing is clear now. This is not just about two celebrities navigating a messy moment. This is about systemic manipulation, hidden agendas, and the unraveling of an entire narrative structure that Hollywood desperately wants to keep intact. And as we head toward the next phase of this saga, you can feel the tension tightening like a wire pulled to its breaking point, ready to snap. And when it does, the fallout will be unlike anything we have seen in years, marking a new era where even the most carefully protected secrets cannot stay buried forever. And as everything now hangs in the balance, the truth is that Hollywood is holding its breath, waiting to see which secret surfaces next and which carefully crafted image finally collapses. Because what began as whispers about a feud has now transformed into a full-scale reckoning, exposing the pressure, the manipulation, and the behind-the-scenes strategies that many suspected but few could ever prove. And while Lively and Reynolds remain silent for now, the silence itself has become louder than any statement they could make, signaling fear, uncertainty, and the realization that the world is watching every move they do or do not make. And whether these recordings ever become public or stay locked inside legal files, the damage is already spreading, rippling through their careers, their friendships, their public personas, and the entire industry that once helped protect them. And now all anyone can do is wait and watch as the truth edges closer to the surface, because once a story reaches this level of momentum, there is no stopping it, no controlling it, and absolutely no turning back.